Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Rianne Moore, and I am the admin coordinator at CAPE, the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. CAPE is a nonprofit that has worked for the past 30 years to advance Asian American and Pacific Islander representation in entertainment for a better world. We champion diversity by educating, connecting, and empowering API leaders and artists in entertainment and media. Those who tuned in live were able to see the animated short Namu live on their screens at home, introduced by executive producer John Cho. However, what I'm really excited to introduce for this video is the rest of this exclusive virtual event with the creative team behind Namu at 9-time Emmy Award winning and leading independent interactive animation studio, Baobab Studios. This conversation will be moderated by Yoonj Kim, an award-winning journalist, correspondent, and producer who has reported from 4 different continents. She has received recognition for her coverage of environmental and indigenous rights, drug trafficking, the housing crisis, and the 2020 presidential race. Currently, Yoonj is the social impact correspondent at MTV News, where she covers social and political issues for millennials and Gen Z audiences. Yoonj will be speaking with Baobab Studios and Namu's director and writer, Erick Oh, producers Maureen and Kane Lee, and Art Director Eusong Lee. And without further ado, here's Yoonj Kim.
Here we go. Thank you everyone so much for joining us tonight. And thank you to the team at Baobab, Erick, Maureen, Kane, Eusong. Yes, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I'm gonna kick it off right away because I'm sure the audience has a lot of questions as well. And if you have any questions as we go, please feel free to drop them in the chat and I will ask them of our creators. First off, this film is just so incredibly touching and it's so impressive to see how many emotions you can feel within a span of just 12 minutes. Like, one of the moments that stood out to me the most personally was watching his relationship end. I was like, no, why did she have to go away or dump him? Like, that's the one question I was dying to know at the end that never really got resolved. But I guess that's the point with this film. There's a lot of unresolved questions that you just kind of have to fill in for yourself. So Erick, I'm going to go to you with the first question, since this started as your creation from your personal experiences, as I understand. You've spoken before about how your grandfather's passing and other personal life events inspired you to make Namu, which means tree in Korean for those who might not speak Korean. So how did creating Namu affect your perspective of those experiences, Erick?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having us. And I see all your amazing comments on the comment section. So thank you so much. So yes, as Yoonji, as you briefly touched upon, the core of original idea of Namu was inspired by, passing of my grandfather. That actually happened almost 10 years ago. So it was almost like, so basically the core idea of this little man hanging his own belongings and memories of the tree has been there for about 10 years. But I wasn't able to take it out from my mental drawer because at the time I was emotionally, of course, very overwhelmed. But of course, that was my actually first time experiencing losing somebody really close to me. So when you, of course, all of us has that experience. And then that really got me thinking a lot about life and where we come from, where do we go? And then I moved on. And for the past decade or a little shorter than that, but going through various emotions, ups and downs, sometime almost 2 years ago, I had this inner calling that maybe this is about time. This is about time for me to take this idea out of my mental door and share with everybody else. And that's when I pitched this idea to amazing people at Baobab. And then that's how it came out to the world.
Cool. And have you heard from, or what was the reception from your family in seeing your grandfather's story represented in such a stunning film?
Oh my God. My mom couldn't stop crying. It really, it was very heartwarming and also breaking moment for us because even though, as you all hopefully experienced while watching, it is very universal. I'm trying to touch upon that, something that everyone can resonate with. but it is deeply coming from a deep personal space. So, which means a lot of vignettes and little stories are directly coming from my personal anecdote. Of course, my mom recognizes some of the moments. Oh my God. So maybe for her, it hit her a little more even deeper level probably. But of course, she really shared how much she enjoyed and was able to feel the life in general. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so touching to hear your mom's reaction to that. I'm sure she must have also found it fulfilling. And now soon the world will know her father and your grandfather's story once it comes out. We have a question from the audience, and I think this goes to Eusong and Erick, since it's more of an artistic question. Yoonhao Zhang is asking how the visual style was accomplished, the combination of 2D and 3D.
I can just briefly touch upon overall direction, because
Please.
It is such story about passage of time basically, and then the story goes through changes in seasons, so which means the usage of the lighting, the color was so important in storytelling. And then Eusong, my great friend, but also he's super amazing with lighting and warmth and all those colors, so he was the perfect fit for this story. But yeah, also, you want to share how you took this idea and then took all this to the next level, with your magic?
Yeah, I mean, just to briefly talk about the general direction, right? Erick softly touched on the whole season aspect of it. I think direction kind of spur out of Erick's inspirations and the story. It was actually quite a smooth process, having that seasonal change as a metaphor of the life and the whole time of passage throughout the entire film. And just to kind of, I think the whole having a season definitely had helped me to create more different type of lightings. And even though it is the same sunset or same nighttime or morning, depends on the air or depends on the age of the person, it comes off to the audience and to the character in the different feelings. So playing around with that kind of visual elements was really fun. And I think I think the question was specifically more about like 2D/3D. And I have to say, like, this film faced a very particular challenge of working with the quill and being in a VR. And as far as there are a lot of amazing VR artists who have created animated sequences, and there are a lot of music to that too. But as we are exploring the tool itself, we wanted to find the style that's unique within that specific tool that we were using. And in the very beginning of the film, Erick actually had this inspirational drawings that he did. I mean, not only he's a great animator, he also has such a specific style to his films, which was a watercolor. And that whole watercolor style, we started from there and try to mimic that into VR experience. And
right,
I think that's where 2D became like a unique process of using traditional medium inspirations and 2D material into a 3D format in quill. So we played around with a lot of different brush strokes and how to even paint certain kind of a texture, because watercolor is a lot about like the opacity of it and the texture of the paper, the tactile feel to it. And today, we couldn't have the painters here today, but Nick and Dan, who was an incredible VR artist, actually somehow magically and with a lot of labor, hand painted every single stroke to create new transitions.
Oh my gosh.
And because the process was mainly like me painting in Photoshop Master Painting.
Right.
VR artist to take that painting to recreate that inside of VR. And
that's incredible.
I learned a lot by just being in this production, to be honest. And me and Erick, we have only a little bit of experience in VR, so the whole thing was very much collaborative process in terms of style.
And speaking of collaborative production, I think it has to be said that you guys made this film during the coronavirus, during the pandemic, which means you were working remotely, painstakingly doing all these details that you just mentioned, Eusong. while working with people across the country or possibly the world. Which brings me to a question I wanted to ask Maureen. As a producer, Maureen, I know that Baobab had to innovate a lot. And what kind of innovations did the company have to bring about to make Namu?
Yeah, well, this is the first time our studio is also doing Quill, because we've done a lot of traditional 2D projects as well as VR. But in the past, most of our projects, you're modeling CG characters, right? But in this one, it's literally you're painting in 3D with your hands, right? So it's a very different process than like modeling in CG. It's more like puppeteering. It's more like stop motion, because there's no like rig. You're not putting bones through the characters like you do in CG animation. You just like paint an arm and you literally have to like move the arm. You have to like, there's no like, I don't know how to say it. There's no skeleton.
It's like
You have to,
sci-fi.
like, move everything. Yeah. So that was very
Right.
hard. And then also Quill isn't made to then transport into other tool sets, like to create 2D versions and whatnot. And one of the reasons why Eric wanted to use Quill is because Namu is about life and all of its imperfections. And so we wanted it to be hand drawn, because using your human hands means that you're painting the imperfections into the literal frames that you're seeing. So that's one of the reasons why we did it. But one of the key innovations is wanting to make you feel like you are actually there with the man. And the mission of Baobab is to inspire the world to dream, bring out your sense of wonder, make you matter. And that means you have to be a character inside the film and actually feel the emotions. And so all of our pieces are experimenting with how to make you matter. And I'm really proud of how Eric and the team thought about how to make it feel as though you're right there next to the character through scale, through like epic proportions and where you are in relationship to these other characters, to make you feel like you're really there and feeling the enormity of life and the world and death and all the big heavy themes.
Totally. Now that you explain it and break it down in technical terms, now I realize, like, yeah, I really felt cold and kind of scared when it started raining in that scene, you know, because you really feel like you were there. It's a different feeling. Kane, as a producer, I wanted to ask you, and I feel like we cannot not ask this question. John Cho came on as an EP and he just gave an introduction at the screening. How did he come on board the project? Beyond the fact that possibly he's Korean, if that was the reason.
Well, first and foremost, as an artist, John simply responded right away to Eric's vision for the film pretty early on. And he wanted to support as an executive producer. Second, we've been super lucky and fortunate at Baobab because in a way, in going to talent, we kind of lean into our DNA as an indie studio startup and our ability to therefore be more creative risk takers, while actually having the support of a lot of animation legends on our team. So that combination is kind of interesting. And, you know, we've been really fortunate to attract the likes of John Legend and Oprah and Kate Winslet and now John, you know, to join us on these endeavors because they want to stand with us on the forefront of art and innovation. That is why they're doing it. They're not doing it for a payday. They're doing it literally because they're really excited by what we're doing. And it's sort of like why we all got started out in this industry in the first place. In approaching John specifically to executive produce, I mean, we sort of borrowed from a page of the film, which is, you know, about a man who has to take a step back to consider what's truly impacted his tree of life. And well, in a way, John Cho has really impacted all of our trees of life, particularly on a project that has been very much led by Asian and Korean Americans like Eric, Eusong, Maureen, and myself. Because truly, as for myself, as a son of first generation immigrants in the 80s and 90s, you know, I never grew up imagining I could ever be a part of telling a story inspired by the life of several generations of Koreans and Korean Americans to the big screen. So John's just been a trailblazer for all of us. And this film is also in part about honoring those who've come before us and inspired us in different ways.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, you can definitely feel an Asian influence, even a Korean influence in the themes, but at the same time, they're so universal, like Eric mentioned at the beginning. And that brings me to a couple questions that the audience wants to ask. I believe it's generally for Eric from Hong Son Yoon and JK. They want to know, in regards to the themes, what do the clocks mean? And both Opera, which is another animated film, and Namu seem to be related to this cycle of life and power that everyone experiences. Why do you personally explore these themes?
Okay. The clock
Big
question. Yeah, clock question. Let me take the easy one out of my way first. Clock literally clocks. He's being chased after by the passage of time, and then in the film, like basically 2 to 3 decades of the time goes by super quickly, and that really symbolizes that he's not taking good care of himself. By being chased after the time. So clock literally means that. So second question, which is bigger, yes. Opera, just so you know, it's another piece I made right before Namu, and then it does touch upon life and humanity, but slightly from different perspective. Namu was all about personal journey to yourself, but Opera is more of my observation and study on how things are going around us, like the history, civilization. So I'm talking about society, and I'm talking about individual journey in Namu. So, but those, I know most of you are not familiar with what Opera. Some of you have probably watched it somewhere else, but at a core, the comment is correct. I am touching upon that humanity, and then it's basically a celebration of life, and then where do we come from, and where do we go, and what life is all about. It's all in search of seeking a meaning of life. So that really matters, and that's what makes me, keep on going. Honestly, finding that answer of who we are and what we are here for. And then Namu or Opera, all of my other films and art, at the end of the day, I'm trying to touch upon that, because it's what it all matters at the end of the day, I guess, in my opinion. Yeah.
Absolutely. And clearly you found the perfect creative team to help you execute this giant vision, which, there were so many different directions your team could have gone with this creatively, and you arrived here. Which brings me to Eusong. As the art director, Eusong, how did you, I guess in your experience, which one, first of all, was the most difficult scene to design or create?
I mean, just like you said, a lot of art direction on many scenes have gone through like different process, but I think the one shot that the open sky shot by the end of the movie, when you see like tiny version of the red tree floating up, and you see this sun.
It's beautiful.
That specific shot, I think in the very beginning we had like a pretty clear idea that it will be very open and airy with a lot of colors, because it is like the transition from kind of like the grounded, somewhat realistic world to the space, like right before that transition moment. And we wanted to be really give enough room people to really feel the emotions in between that transition, but at the same time wow people with the beauty of that world that he encapsulates in. And yeah, it's funny that we started as you guys saw, similar to what you guys saw, and then we went through a whole different journey of different shapes and colors and designs, and then came down to full circle, and like just like a couple days before the wrap, we went back to, okay, I think the empty sky makes the most sense. And it just went back to where we started.
Right.
Yeah, it just had the most most like doing it again and again, like changes and thoughts and talking about it, what it's supposed to mean and supposed to express. So I just remember that shot very clearly.
Yeah, it was a stunning scene. And I guess it kind of makes sense, because that was the moment when we go from like an earth-based reality, just realistic scenes, and then it becomes spiritual.
Yeah.
So it's much more abstract than it was before. Yeah, very stunning. How did you decide the direction, the artistic style that the movie would take?
I think we kind of briefly talked about it in the previous question too, but it really was like a collaborative process with initial inspirations from Eric, but also our quill artist, who what is possible to create in this tool, and at the same time, what are we trying to express, right? I mean, the character himself is an artist. He has a vision, and we are kind of in his mind, in this abstract world where
Mhm.
a lot of visuals are embodiment of himself, like all the objects are history of his life and how things are animated, and the color, the mood is where he's at. So really following his life and trying to understand what he's trying to feel helped me to find colors. I think that's actually where we started, the first colors. And then once we found the color, we tried to get the shapes and designs, and things kind of like developed from that point on.
I see.
Speaking of colors, if I can chime in a little bit. So
Yes, please.
as you probably have noticed, it really goes from season, like 4 clear seasons, from spring,
Yep.
summer, fall, into the in the winter, that deep it's gonna go back all the way to the spring. And then really in the beginning we don't have much color. That symbolizes that youth, the white canvas. And then colors, ideas, concepts, belongings, materials, like still, kept on coming into play. So that's how we grow, and that's how we have multiple different perspectives as we grow. So even those were really something we kind of like discussed really in a deeper way.
I see. Yeah, and I guess it also makes it like the seasons of the year and also the seasons of his life kind of easier to follow chronologically. It's poetic, which I guess was the point. Maureen, I wanted to ask you, as the CEO of Baobab, I know that you guys have harnessed so much innovation, as we discussed earlier, but you also did it with such a small team, as a startup, essentially. So as the CEO, what are you most proud of, if you can choose a moment or a thing?
I think it's how every single time we do a new project, it's crazy. And we think we're like, there's no way we can do it. But then we're just like, because every single thing is so different. And we also push ourselves. We say every single project we do has to innovate in terms of creative, in terms of technology, everything, because as a startup, you have to constantly be innovating. And when we're pushing ourselves, I'm just proud that the end product is good. That it doesn't come across as like a technology for technology's sake. It's like at the core of everything, it's about the story and humanity, and that we never lose sight of that despite the innovation. But I am proud about how we are able to use the technology to be able to convey something in a way that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. I'm also proud that we did this with such a small team. I mean, it was a core team of, I would say, 5 people, which would be Eusong, Erick Oh, 2 animators, and a layout artist. That's like just the core team made that, literally hand painted every single frame that you see there, because there's no, for those of you who are familiar with animation, there's no real frame interpolation. You had to literally paint every single scene, and then every single lighting, because it's 2D, like if you have to repaint everything every single time the lighting changed, right? Or if you decided to change the angle. So I'm just amazed that the team was able to do that with just 5 people in such a short amount of time, just through passion. So I'm just proud that we're able to always find the most amazing, passionate people to be able to create these amazing pieces of work.
Right. And going off of that, do you think in some ways there's an advantage to working with a smaller team when it comes to like newer innovations or newer technology or things that haven't really been done before?
Absolutely. Because we're such a small team, that means everybody has to do a lot of different things rather than one area. And when you're doing so many different things, you feel more ownership of the final product, instead of like, I only own this little piece and I'm going to polish this to be really pretty and not care about the rest of it. You care. It's like, it's your film. And so every single person feels like it's, has a lot of pride for it. And I think that just makes you work even more hard because you're so excited about it.
Right. And speaking of this team at Kane, I wanted to ask you, so much of Namu involves diversity, as you mentioned before. So how do you think this global representation inspired the making of Namu, or even the production of it after, either or?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, which was, a few months before the pandemic hit, we had a choice in front of us. We could have gone with a solid local team, or we could go, totally international, 3 different continents with the best quill artists in the world. And so we actually conscientiously made the decision to go with the best artists around the world, no matter their location, even if that meant coming up with a fully remote global pipeline. We were we were embarking upon, from everything you've heard, like one of our and Erick's most ambitious endeavors ever. And so literally we decided to go this way, and then the pandemic hit. And then, now we've seen remote work, as this sort of seismic shift in the world as a result of the pandemic. But we kind of created this ahead of it. So we were actually very pandemic proof in a way. But I think creatively, not only did we get the best of the best in order to like execute such a meticulous and dynamic process, but having all these different diverse international points of view in the making of the film, I think really contributed to the universal feeling that comes across. Our ability for anyone from any culture to relate to this very human journey, while retaining the specificity of Erick's own Korean heritage and the history in all the different poetic details that are, if you look closely enough, there are like Easter eggs throughout the entire film. So I think
Right.
that balance that you've mentioned earlier on this talk as well is just something that we couldn't have had actually without a very international team, without very diverse points of view, and something where that question of how do you, the most specific can be the most universal if you do it the right way. And so that's what we were going for. And so far, it feels like we are striking a chord with people from different places.
Nice. And speaking of these Easter eggs, I'd love to just highlight a couple if we can, Erick and Eusong. Like, what were some of the most Korean influences, in your opinion, in this film?
Cup noodle.
Right, that's gotta be.
Cup noodle and a bowl of kimchi.
Yeah, we had very specific Tupperware that I had actually that I put kimchi in. And I always gotta have kimchi ramen, so gotta go with
Probably that Tupperware was like happened to be right next to you when you were designing it, right?
I think even the table too. I think we picked like a specific table that like you can buy in Korea, like one of those circular table.
Oh, right.
It's
Nice.
like teapot or fan, or even when the character becomes the old man, there's a pyeongpung. What is it called? Like blinder?
Yeah, like a backdrop, I guess.
Yeah. It's like a blinder with the Oriental Korean traditional painting.
Oh,
on
right.
them. Yeah, so those are
the folding wall.
Folding wall, yeah, basically.
Yeah. My grandparents have those.
All
I guess
our
every Korean
grandparents
grandparent has those.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're classic.
Yeah.
Nice. I guess this conversation's inspiring some people in the audience, because Celestial is asking, I guess this is more for Kane and Maureen, what is the recruiting and hiring process for a film like this?
Well, I think, as Maureen talked about, we had a very small core team. So it wasn't a typical recruiting process of like, we have our studios here and we're looking for artists, who are willing to move here. It was literally empowering Erick to form his dream team for this project, because we had limited resources and we were pretty ambitious in terms of our timeline for it. This was one where it was, in a way, we created a sandbox for ourselves, but made those decisions to just go for the best of the best, because the tools we were using are so specialized and so new that it was fairly obvious, like who would be who could be that A team to pull something like this off. So it was like very not a traditional like sort of recruiting process, which I find is very typical in sort of the indie studio startup world.
And does that involve going to agencies, or do you guys start at like agents? I know that in my side of the industry, people go to agents, talent agents. How about for the creative artistic side that you guys do?
I think in the animation world and also in the immersive technology world, it's very small world, and it's word of mouth. It's people have great reputations.
Right.
It's there's not anything set up in the way the Hollywood agent system is in terms of talent. So it's a small community, and it's very. You could pick up the phone and know within 10 minutes like who are the people to go after. So
I see. Cool. So reputation goes a long way, I'm assuming.
I think so. I mean, whenever you're in a new space, people can, plant their flagpole and become that person, right? So, when we are doing when we're trying to do what we're doing, which is push the boundaries, there are fewer people on those boundaries, willing to be on those boundaries. There's a lot more people, doing, the more traditional things over and over, but we weren't looking for those.
Got it. And similarly, Lil Ree wants to know, how did you figure out the budget for this short film?
Okay, well,
Maureen or Kane? Maybe Maureen can take this one.
Yeah, we figured it out based off of what we did is we just figured out who all the people are that we needed to create it. Larry Cutler, who's not on here, he's actually our CTO and kind of a COO and our IT guy and everything. But he basically worked with Erick Oh and figured out, and our production manager, Anika, and wrote down all the talent that we need, and then we just put budgets next to them and add it up. But I can assure you that it's like I said, it was 5 people in the core team, so it was
right
a very small budget without
Just to
going
share my perspective, because it was amazing combination and a pretty unique combination, because it is coming from full support from a company, Baobab, and then really Maureen and Baobab, gave us a full trust and then make it feel like a DIY production, which is actually amazing for the creators, because you get to really choose, who you would like to work with. And also, as a small group, you can actually change direction as fast as you can, try a variety of stuff. But that type of, vibe and atmosphere was very unique and special about this project from my perspective.
Wow. And Eric, we have a question specifically for you from Yusan Chong. What is your writing process like, since there's no dialogue in the film? Like, how do you describe visual language in a written language? It's a great question.
Yeah, for a film like this, it's really using both writing and drawing to, even when it comes to planning, of course, you do have to write a lot to get the structure right. And then, but we are using, as a visual artist, I use both drawing and scribbles and storyboards, or even writings, to communicate together. That's just really because this one doesn't have dialogue, as the question pointed out. It was more about the rhythm and then what needs to be conveyed, and what a piece of important information we should be things to be delivered in certain section, right? So those were written down in a the most clearest way, and then we started from there. So that's the long story put. It's a very messy, honestly, creation, because you go back and forth between writing and drawing. But you got to use all the weapons you got to tell a story.
Right. Would you say you depend more on a written script, or like your storyboard, your visual storyboard?
It really depends. For this one, for specific, I relied more on visual boarding right away, immediately, because from the get-go, I already knew that it's going to be a very musical piece without dialogue, and so with the basic information of written documents to communicate with the team, I straight up went to the visual pitching right away, and then we started from there.
Gotcha. And when you started this film, did you have an intended audience?
Yes,
beyond perhaps your family.
Yes and no, because when it comes to short film, of course, Baobab may not agree with me, but the storyteller per se, it was really coming from self-expression purpose. First of all, like, I am putting out my heart, I'm sharing piece of who I am in front of you. So that was the really initial drive for me to actually tell the story. But at the same time, I am doing this to share it with people. I'm not writing a diary by myself. I am, making a film to share this with you and then tell you what I think, and ask questions to all of us, and then discuss, right? So that being said, target audience, was really just ourselves in a way. My parents, or maybe if you have a daughter or a son, maybe they can be your why not, right? So, like, just to borrow the specific terminology, general audience is our target. But I think I really did this for myself also, for people who I truly love.
Yeah. Yeah, as you were saying that, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, this would be the perfect movie to watch on Thanksgiving with my family. Because it's short and sweet, but universal and family related. And I'm Korean, so obviously my parents would relate to that part of it. But it's so universal and so easy to share, like regardless of age, and something that you want to share with people close to you. It's not like, oh, I should, tell this person that I just met about it, which you should. But I mean, like the first thing you think about is like your family and your friends, which I think speaks to a lot about how touching and intimate the film is. Eusong, I wanted to ask you, after you described how much detail you put into hand painting each scene, do you think you'll do another one like that? Do you have like a preference now? Like, do you want to do more like less hand painted, or does it depend on the project, I guess?
I mean, it's hard to say. But I don't think it's really so much about like whether it is hand painting or more graphic or more rendered. I mean, when I first heard about this project from Erick, what I just loved about it was just the creative aspect of it, like how innovative this project is to begin with. I mean, also the fact that it's using VR and there will be a 2D version as well. I mean, I'm like loving working on story or shorts or any kind of format that it has some experimental means to it. And I mean, just like what Kane and Maureen said, like it really is about pushing the boundaries and trying out something that I wouldn't be able to do anywhere else. Like it was a very unique experience. And I also learned a lot by our quill artists who are basically the masters in this area of VR and quill. So it was also a good opportunity to learn. So if I hope I'm answering the question, but I think I'm answering in a way that I would hands down, I will be working on a project like this again. It is an experience to work within these teammates, and it is a learning, opportunity to a new media and a new story, and also a different way of telling a story. It has no dialogues, very poetic, and has an arc that is not very. What's the right word to describe it? Right, like it is a poetic, has an arc to it.
You have to think about it.
Yeah, it really is, and it makes you think. I think that's the huge value for me whenever I watch something. Beyond, the humor and the lesson is all great too, but the feelings and kind of questions that you get to ask, I think those are the ones that really enriches you, like kind of books that like makes you, I don't know, look back about your life and, just thinking about your loved ones. So it was really meaningful to work on it. So yes, I mean, in a way, I would love to work on another experimental all hand painted films.
Do you find, I know that like any sort of creative expression, especially an intensive project like this, it's draining, or however you want to describe it. It takes a lot out of you. So do you have like a specific recovery or rejuvenation process after a big project like this? Or just go sleep, and not look at a computer for several weeks?
I think for me, a lot of it is, like it took me a while to find that work-life balance, right? I try to have hobbies. I think that's just my main thing to stay. Because animation people spend so much time painting and drawing and animating, boarding. It's all very labor-intensive work. So I just like hobbies that I really suck at. Like, I'm terrible at surfing, but I still want to go out there and do things.
That's great advice, actually. It's so much less pressure.
Yeah, like that feeling of it's okay to be bad at something. I think that's where I get healings from. Yeah. Totally.
No, I totally understand that. And that's so healthy. Just take the pressure off of yourself for once.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Super random fun facts. I think I first pitched this initial vision to Eusong and Kane individually in the coffee shop. So I was having coffee with Kane. Hey, by the way, I have this idea. I shared it with Kane. It was really one of the first people I shared with. And even Eusong too. We were just hanging out in Los Angeles somewhere over there. And we were having coffee. By the way, I have this idea. So it all started from there,
Yeah, I mean, it all started from doing nothing, is what you're saying, or just from relaxing.
Chilling and relaxing, and by the way, I have this
Chilling.
idea thing, and you know,
Yeah.
Nice. Kane and Maureen, I guess looking towards the future now, people want to know what is next for all of you in Baobab Studios.
I think, you know, Namu really reflects where we are in our sort of growth, you know, as a young studio. We're just 6 years old, and you know, we have been very lucky to get the support to try all these new innovations in animation. So I think we're kind of like discovering what is the animation studio of the 21st century. What does that look like? You know, with all the changes that are happening at rapid fire, you know, like everything is changing so fast right now. You know, what does it mean to be, you know, a leader in animation and storytelling, to work with, you know, artists and innovators like Erick and Eusong? Like, how do we redefine ourselves, and how do we break the mold of what all these traditional big studios are like? You know, Erick and myself have come from one. Eusong's at Pixar right now. Maureen has worked in really bigger scale situations, and I think like we just love kind of being like this you know, innovative team. So we're expanding our characters and universes in ways that are exciting to us. So that includes, you know, we're doing several tentpole projects for the streamers in animation that are more traditional. We are doing more innovative projects. We're going into games. We're doing graphic novels. We're doing book series. But it's important to us, like when we go into these areas, not to be doing it just for the sake of doing it, but to be working with the best partners, and being really sort of nimble and creative about how we can just like make these characters come to life across mediums. I mean, we sincerely believe that the best stories and the best characters can exist across mediums. You know, and maybe part of what being the animation studio of the 21st century means is being open to that and discovering what that you know, what that leads us to. So I think Namu is like a perfect reflection of like where we are in that cycle, and kind of a preview of what's to come.
Nice. Anything you want to add to that, Maureen? And any thoughts on the future and the vision that you have for your team and for the studio?
I think Kane did a great job, but I'm super excited about a model where an audience member belongs to a universe or to that world rather than to a specific platform, just in terms of from a business perspective. And so you're just in love with the universe, and you don't have to make all this differentiation between like, where do I go to access that universe? Like them all to be merged together. So you can imagine,
Right.
for example, when we've taken IP that we've created in VR, we also have created the 2D version, we have the film version, the book version, the movie version. For them to be connected with one another is what my ultimate vision is. And so we're moving along on that vision with things I can't tell you right now, but we'll be announcing shortly.
But the word seems to be franchise, or having that whole line, which I think it's great. Like, you should build, I mean, you guys, yeah, definitely deserve to build your empire in all the different mediums. With that, I think that is it for time. Let's see. Oh, yes, one more question. How can everyone who tuned in support this film after we sign off tonight? This is open to anyone, everyone.
Well, definitely follow us at Baobab Studios, and there'll be a lot of different announcements coming up. Like Maureen alluded to, we have a lot. We have more screenings, more events. I think someone asked, is it going to be released widely? We are, you know, we are in various talks around that. There is a lot of opportunities ahead. We want as many people to be able to see this as possible. We're really grateful you guys came and were among the very earliest to see it in its you know, in its infancy. And but yeah, just follow us, and we will update you as much as we can. But we want as many people to see it, so you can support us by just telling people about it, and you know, looking for other opportunities to see it and to support Erick and Baobab's work.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you for joining us tonight for this panel. And thank you for creating this incredible film for all of us to share. I know that I'm definitely going to play this for my parents and my sister on Thanksgiving. So with that, thank you, Eric, Maureen, Eusong, and Kane. I'm going to hand it back over to Rianne.
Hello,
Thank you,
yes.
Ray.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, everybody, for such an introspective and informative conversation. We covered so many topics just in this past 45 minutes following this screening. And Maureen, I think one thing that you said about the film that really stuck with me was how it wanted to inspire the world to dream and really put yourself inside the film to just truly feel these emotions and make it feel like you mattered. And I think it really helped me understand on a deeper level why y'all as the creative team made the choices that you did to explore Namu both thematically and technically. And I can really see how it makes it so deeply personal to everybody, especially to you, Eric, but also relatable to everybody. So thank you so much. And so if you enjoyed our panels, please be sure to give CAPE a follow. I will give a toggle a little bit here. CAPE a follow on Instagram and Twitter at CAPE USA. And as we come to Giving Tuesday after Thanksgiving and the end of the year, I'd love to ask if you can consider supporting CAPE with a donation on our website at capeusa.org. And once again, thank you, John Cho, for the introduction. Thank you, Yoonj, for hosting this great conversation. You can follow her on Instagram at Yoonj_Kim and on Twitter at Yoonj Kim. And Eric, Maureen, Kane, and Eusong, thank you so much for just letting us into your world for the past hour and really helping us explore Namu. Be sure to give this short film some major love on social media as some of the first people who've seen it, and just support it in all the ways that they have mentioned. And thank you once again for tuning in. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you next time. Bye all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.